In this episode of The Bear Roars, Dan chats with Boulder, Colorado innovator Pete Burridge, the founder and CEO of Greenhouse Scholars, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting high-achieving, under-resourced students through education, mentorship, and career development. With a career spanning over 3 decades, Pete has held leadership roles in various industries, including marketing, finance, and customer experience. Before Greenhouse Scholars, he founded and led Greenhouse Partners, a strategy and creative services firm. Pete is passionate about empowering the next generation of leaders and is committed to driving positive social change through innovative approaches to education and community development. Let's poke the bear to kick off the conversation.
You know, what's kind of crazy about this podcast is I think we've known each other for years, but if you added all the time that we spent talking to each other one-on-one, it'd probably be less than an hour. At least I can't recall us having any deep conversations other than in group settings. Do you recall any?
No, I think that's an accurate number, the under an hour number.
Yeah. So this is going to be interesting because I'm going to learn a lot about you and maybe you'll learn a little bit about me as part of it.
Yeah. Awesome. No, that's right.
So Boulder, how did you end up in Boulder? What got you here to Boulder?
So a couple of parts to that story. One thing that I think is interesting is that my father went to school at the University of Colorado a long, long time ago, and it was dirt roads and the whole thing. He came out on the train, and he had $3. And so I had a different experience when I came out here, but I did come here for school. My 2 brothers also came here, and then I left for about 10 years for jobs, and I was fortunate enough to get a search consultant call about a job back here, and we were pregnant with our oldest at the time.
That's roughly when?
So that is 30 years ago now. So I've been back for 30 years, and it's been amazing.
So what does Boulder itself mean to you? Like, why did you stay in Boulder? Why did you just say it's amazing? Tell us Boulder according to Pete.
Dan, we're gonna need to spend the whole hour on what does Boulder mean.
Yes, that's fine. I love Boulder.
Yeah, no, I do too. But I think it's an interesting place. It's changed a great deal, in my opinion. I mean, I do think the heritage of the town from the 60s and the 70s is sort of a hippie culture, and it's really an affluent community now. It's mainly a white community with a strong Hispanic influence, and I think there's an opportunity for that to continue to evolve. I'm ahead of myself, but I actually think Coach Prime has done some good in that regard. But Boulder, for kids, for me, it's this connection to the outdoors. And so I grew up in Chicago. And
as did I.
Yeah, I did know. We knew that about each other.
Yes, we did.
And so this is a place where, I have 4 daughters. They're all adults now. They're all expert fly fishermen. They've all been in the backcountry backpacking a dozen times on raft trips and on and on. And I think that's the magic of Colorado. And then the fact that Boulder sits right here, on the foothills and the hiking and all of that. And I think it's a different vibe than, say, a suburb. So I think of Boulder as a small, thriving city. And that matters to me. I think that cities are places that have their whole ecosystem. They have all the different things to sustain a really interesting culture and personality. Cities take those on. And even though we're this close to Denver, I think we're our own city, and I love
What's
that.
interesting, I'm going to pick up on 2 things there. One is we grew up in Chicago, and you could be 45 minutes from downtown Chicago. You could be an hour from downtown Chicago, and you're in a suburb. And some of those are big, like Naperville's big. There's big, but they're called suburbs. No one here thinks of Boulder as a suburb of Denver. They think of Boulder as its own community, which is what you just said. Another thing is you use the word small. No one really thinks of Boulder as small, other than maybe people who live here. But Boulder is kind of on the national map for a lot of reasons. So it plays, in that sense, above its weight, but also blows up to be a pretty big city day in and day out when people flow in for multiple different reasons. So in some ways, it's a smaller community that feels like a larger community at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And, we didn't yet mention the university's influence on that. And that gets the city to sort of change summer versus when the students are back, and then all of the business orientation that the university provides, the knowledge capture. So our city has that too, and I think that makes a big difference.
So you mentioned Coach Prime. I think Coach Prime's been national news since he's come here, and for good reason. What do you think the more permanent legacy of Coach Prime is going to be on Boulder and maybe even Colorado?
So, yeah, I'm a big sports fan. I'm a big Buff fan. I used to work in sports, and I think the jury's out as to whether or not he's going to be a great coach. And I think the coaching profession is quantitative. It's based on results and winning. And here, he's yet to do that. One thing, though, that he has already done that I've really noticed is he has created a spotlight for Black people as it relates to this city. And it's crazy. You know, I don't think people fully appreciate it. So I've got a number of racially diverse people that work for me. And this one woman who's my COO of one of my companies, I've got 3 companies, and one of them, she's the COO. She went to breakfast at the Buff about 8 months ago, last football season. And she came back and she goes, damn, I saw more Black people just now at breakfast than I've seen in my entire 2 years in Boulder. And that's a real thing, and for people that are paying attention to that. And then I had an experience myself where the people sitting in front of me at my football seats were a Black couple. And I just knocked the guy on the shoulder, into the game. I said, hey, you guys obviously don't sit here normally. You fans of the other team, you haven't really been. I couldn't tell, who you're cheering for. And he goes, to be honest with you, we're not really even football fans. We're here on our honeymoon, and we just thought we'd check out this thing going on here that we heard about with Coach Prime and the university and the city becoming more welcoming for Black people. He said that. I'm like, wow, that perception. So I think that's amazing. That's already happened. He gets all the credit for that.
I had a similar experience. I was at the CU Buffs game, and there was this guy sitting next to me, and he too was a Black guy, and I tapped his leg like you tapped a leg, and I looked him in, and I looked straight up. I said, hi, I'm Dan. And he said, I'm Jay. I'm like, Jay? He's like, yeah, I'm Dr. Jay. It's Julius Erving.
Wow.
So that's part of what Coach Prime has done is you go to those games and you see a lot of national figures there who come because they want to see what Coach Prime is doing. He's transformed. Like you said, he hasn't won yet, and maybe never will win at that level here in Colorado. It's too early to tell. But he has transformed the way college sports works, particularly football, and how to really transform programs. And what I've been most impressed by, I have not met him yet. What I've been most impressed by is the impact he leaves with his student athletes, the message he sends. We had an event here at the house. I can't remember if we had anyone from Greenhouse Scholars there. We'll get to Greenhouse Scholars in a second. But we invited the football team over here, and we had about 12 prominent kind of entrepreneurs mostly from the tech sector, and we spent time with them. And the message was, you guys came here because of football. We want you to stay here because you feel welcome. We want you to know that there's jobs here, there's a life here for you. You're welcome in this community, whether it's Boulder or the broader Denver, and we're here for you. So if you're looking to get networked, you're looking to get introduced, you're looking for an internship, recognizing that most of them don't have a lot of opportunity in their life, given their football commitment for a traditional internship, but perhaps there's ways we could squeeze things in. And certainly when you're getting closer to graduation, we want you to have a community here that you can reach out to and get help. Yeah. And they've loved it. They've loved it.
Yeah. I do think, and I'm not sure I qualify even remotely as an expert on this, but I do think our community has a lot of work to do still to create an environment that actually is welcoming for people of color. And I think the want is there, the desire for the community has the desire to become a more diverse place. And I think that what we just talked about, shining a light on that as the starting place, it creates awareness. But I do think that we aren't yet understanding actually how to do that as a community, create a welcoming environment. And I think that I notice even, a lot of white people walking down the street, Black person walks by in Boulder, they all notice. And I think that that's maybe normal, but it's exacerbated here because it's so unusual to see folks of color walking down the street. And I think we've got to get that to change. I think it's got to be, for folks to feel comfortable, I think it's got to feel normal, natural, like it would in a city, like in Chicago or wherever.
Yeah. What's interesting, and I grew up in just south of the city of Chicago, primarily from a very Italian family, and primarily in coming from very blue-collarish neighborhoods. And there you had the Italians, you had the Hispanic population, you had the Black population, you had the Polish population. And for the most part, they didn't really trust one another. They didn't really mesh. And behind closed doors, you would hear people say things that even by the standards of 30 years ago were considered to be prejudice. Here, you never hear anyone say anything, at least I never do, that sounds like a source of being prejudiced against someone for how they look, what the color of their skin is, what their ethnic background is. So and that's, I think, unique. You just almost never see that in the greater Boulder area.
I agree.
But at the same time, and this is why what you had just said, there's also this other situation where even though I think most people here would welcome more diversity, I can't think of anyone who wouldn't, and I think a lot of people overtly do, there are hurdles, primarily because of wealth, that make it hard to kind of transition the community. Plus, people are here, tend to stay here, so there's not a turnover like you might have in other communities as well.
Yeah, no, you brought up a great example of a difference, your experience in Chicago. And actually, one of the other things we have talked about before, my wife is from the same area as you in Chicago, on the South Side, and she's also Italian. And
good for her.
Yeah. And so my kids are all half Italian because I'm screwing it up by being Scottish. Yeah. But and I played in a very interesting football league on the South Side of Chicago for 8 years after college, and all the people in my football league were from that neighborhood except for me, and so the teams were all what you just described. There were 2 Italian teams, 2 Black teams, 2 Hispanic teams, 2 Polish teams. I mean, really, everybody was divided up that way, and I got in on this team because of a guy I worked with at the Chicago Board of Trade back in the day. But so that's what you were saying. Back to your point about the community and the fact that you don't hear anything negative with regard to race here. I totally agree with that, and that's what I meant by the want is here, yes. But we haven't created the environment, because of some of the work I do. One of my organizations that, as you say, we're going to talk about later. I've talked to a lot of Black people about how they feel here, and it's not the way it needs to be. It's not where it needs to be. And it's not, the good news is what you said, is that nobody's going home like when you were growing up in Chicago and talking about things the wrong way. People are actually talking about it the right way. How do we figure this out? How do we make it more welcoming?
And it's authentic.
I'm optimistic about our community in that way.
All right, so before we get to Greenhouse Scholars, talk about what else you're doing on the professional level, your other businesses, what they're all about, how you develop those businesses.
Yeah. So let's see. I've got 3 companies right now, and I've been an entrepreneur my whole career. I've been a part of starting 7 companies, and people used to use that term serial entrepreneur. I don't think of myself that way. I'm not always after the next thing and after the next thing. And in fact, my brand strategy, digital advertising firm, marketing company, it's 24 years old. I still work there. I'm not looking for the 2-year, how do I flip this thing or whatever. So that company, 24 years old, great company. We sort of combine the concept of strategy, creative, content, and digital. And so we're a full service agency in the old vernacular, but we're a boutique firm.
Who would give us examples of some customers?
So, Coca-Cola, Darden Restaurants, Ball, Miller Coors, are some of the, easy to talk about clients in terms of people's recognition. Mm-hmm. But we also are working with all kinds of entrepreneurial endeavors, medium-sized companies that are leaders in their industry. So wealth management firm that's the 28th largest in the country. You'd know it if you were in that space, but otherwise maybe not. And we've been a part of now, I think, 15 or 16 startups over the years. And so a lot of real estate work, big master plan community developments we do the marketing for. So all over the place in terms of verticals. And so that's that company. Digital.
And how much of that is Colorado-based clients versus clients elsewhere?
I'd say it's about 60% outside of Colorado, 40% inside of Colorado.
Gotcha.
In fact, one of the things that we're proudest about at that company over the 24 years is for about 12 years, we were the agency of record for the University of Colorado, the state system. And so we were working with the president's office down in Denver, Bruce Benson in particular, who I think is the best president that we've ever had at the university. And he and Ken McConnell, who was his chief guy for brand and marketing and PR, were our clients. And it was such a great experience for me to work on all of the different University of Colorado campuses unifying under a brand. And that work, was really satisfying, really successful. So that's an example of a Colorado connection for that company. That was a good one. But yep. Then the other company, it's a digital media company. It's called The 18, and we're the largest soccer media company in the United States. And so we're reporting on covering the sport of soccer globally. And soccer is really interesting in this way. It's the only sport in the United States that we've adopted that we didn't really invent. And the other thing is that all the consumers of the sport that are the rabid consumers, the sort of under 35-year-olds, they're consuming at least 3 soccer leagues at one time. Could you imagine, like, as a fan of the NFL, could you imagine if you were following 3 other professional football leagues?
Leagues, not just teams.
Yeah, leagues. Yeah, so it's crazy. So that's been fun, and that's a digital lifestyle brand.
Are you familiar with the company All City here in Colorado?
Say it again.
All City. It's a relatively new company. They just brought in Tegna as their new strategic investor. We're an investor as well. So All City is interesting because what they do is they focus on the micro brands, sports brands that are in a given city. So, for example, they're here in Colorado. One of their brands is DNVR, and there's a DNVR for the Broncos. There's one for the Rockies. There's one for the Avalanche. There's one for the Nuggets. So those who are wanting a big dose of their local teams can go to DNVR Nuggets and just have frequent, deep content, podcasts, YouTubes, other types of merchandise.
Oh, very cool.
And Chicago is a second city there. Is Philadelphia. They're rolling out, I believe, in Dallas soon, Phoenix. So they go deep into their sports teams that they cover, including, I think, I know CU Boulder is part of their package here in Colorado. And I think the soccer team is too, the Rapids.
Is it all pro in college?
Yeah, primarily pro, but since Deion showed up here, magically, CU became one of their brands as well.
Yeah, right. Very cool. Yeah, so those are the other 2 companies that I've got going on right now.
Well, let's get to Greenhouse Scholars. That's, what I consider is one of the more special kind of organizations out there that's really making a difference. So let's start by you telling us the story of Greenhouse Scholars. Maybe really in any way you want to tell the story, whether it's about Greenhouse Scholars itself or about what inspired you to bring that to life.
Yeah, well, I love talking about Greenhouse. So, I'm really excited about what we're doing and where it's headed. In terms of sort of the origin story, I'm not sure how interesting it is. Just maybe the extrapolation for me that I think is really interesting has to do with people having ideas and the idea of impact and everything. And maybe there's value for your listeners in terms of the concept of, well, I've got an idea and should I do it or not? So when I started Greenhouse Partners, the brand strategy marketing firm, we said, well, we want to have a company that really is connected to the community, giving back. And we got about 4 years in and said, well, we're doing great.
This is roughly what time frame?
So this is 19 years ago. Okay. So Greenhouse Scholars is 19 years old. Gotcha. You made me think about that. The only reason I got that right is we were in a meeting last week, and somebody in the meeting, Andra, who you've met,
yes,
she said, next year is our 20th anniversary. I'm like, what? I mean, I really, I didn't, I don't pay attention that way. So it was surprising to me. So we're 19 years old. So this is like 19 years ago, and we said, all right, we're profitable, we're doing great, we can do this, we can invest in the community somehow. So I've got a research background, consumer research background, and I started to do some research. And, I was looking into things in the broadest sense, and all I cared about in that research was what are the things that could maybe make the biggest impact subjectively in the world if I'm going to spend my time on it. So I looked at climate change, I looked at poverty, I looked at all kinds of stuff. And I started to really dig into education. And one of the reasons why I got attracted to education is that I've always believed that education is this great leveler. And so in doing that, I thought to myself, well, if we can really make an impact in education, we could probably affect a lot of these other things I'm looking at. So I was really after the biggest possible impact. I did not want to do a project. I didn't want to have a diffuse, use of resource or effort and do 10 things. I didn't want to start a foundation, which, someday maybe I will. But I wanted to start a 501c3. I wanted to have a focused mission. And so personal passion around young people that ended up getting folded into it. I don't really understand for sure what it is about me that's always been that way, but I'm definitely the guy that if I was walking down the street when I was 23 and somebody was picking on somebody, I was in that fight. And I don't know. I can't tell you, what that's about. But it, as a proxy, the idea of young people, fairness. So that was sort of feeding into the research I was doing. And then I found this statistic about college kids, first generation low income college kids. So they're already in college, are graduating at a rate of 1 in 10.
Holy cow.
So why bother?
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Why bother? And so that made me really think about some things. And what it got me to end up, when we get into the design of Greenhouse, is this concept of, all right, if we want to have huge impact, that means sustainable, lasting, generational change. That means we have to change communities. You can't just, change some people, even if it's thousands of them. It won't matter that much if you can't figure out how to change the infrastructure that's
environment
underneath it. Yeah, the environment.
Yes.
Yeah. So the idea was, well, wait a minute, if we can take these really inspiring people from these communities that are graduating, those 1 in 10, and we can change that statistic, and then we can design something where we're working with them for the rest of their lives, literally, we can go back into these communities and create change from within by then putting all these other resources around these folks. By other resources, I'm talking about capital. I'm talking about people that have sophisticated business acumen, people that have connections across all vocations, people that know how to get things done, that know the right people. So people like to talk about how you have to create change from within, but I think they've missed the part I just talked about. You can't just go back into a school, let's say, and say, I'm going to be an incredible teacher at a low-income school. So that's what my oldest daughter is doing. And I'm, really excited about the fact that she's doing that. But is she going to change that school forever? No, she's going to have a huge impact on some individuals. And
The
that's
school might change her forever, given some of the challenges and kind of public schools in those types of neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, and if we get a chance and or whenever you think it'd be best, I've got some really interesting stories about her experience that connect to our broader conversation. But so you've got to take these really incredible people that came from these low income environments, and you've got to surround them with a committed community. And I know I overemphasize the word committed, and I'm just trying to really make a point, which is that our community is a group of people that are all in. And so they understand, because we're bringing them in, and then they're having experiences with us, and then they're having another one, and they're starting to realize, wait a minute, I'm going to be doing this for a long time. This is not, I wrote the check, or I mentored a student and I did my thing and I'm going to move on to the next thing. So I call it, we have a community of people that will take my call. And I think everybody knows what that means. And I don't mean literally my call, but Greenhouse's call. When we have a project, we have an initiative, we have something that we're going to go make happen that's big, that we're going to go scale, we know that a lot of the people in our community will take the call, will sign up, raise their hand, and get to work with us on it.
Yeah, as you know, I've been a supporter of Greenhouse Scholars for quite some time, probably more than half its life, I imagine. It's got to be at least 10 years.
Yep.
And took a different tack than you in setting up, instead of setting up my own nonprofit organization, set up a foundation with the idea that we would amplify kind of those organizations that are out there and having impact. And part of our, my philosophy that is becoming part of the Crucial Ventures philosophy is, if you're part of the Crucial Ventures team, part of your job, part of what you're being paid for is to look across our portfolio of nonprofits we support, find one of them that, or hopefully more than one of them, that really lines up with your personal kind of objectives, and spend time with them. So we're not just cutting checks, we're getting engaged with it. And out of all the organizations we support, the one that people gravitate toward most is Greenhouse Scholars. You know, they attend events, they become mentors, you know, they ask how they could be more impactful, how they could be more involved. They help in the selection. So maybe before we get into how it works, can you think of a few people, Greenhouse Scholars, that really jump out at you, that you guys have supported from early on and through their journey, and then how they turn into leaders back in their communities, inspirations for others to multiply kind of the impact that Greenhouse is having?
Yeah, that's easy to do. And I just want a quick clarification, and then I'll jump right back to that.
Sure.
I want to make sure that the way I said it didn't come across the wrong way. The reason that I wanted to start a 501c3 and create like a really big impact on the world is that the point in time of my life that I was doing it, I was thinking of it as, I'm going to be investing a lot of my career in this.
Yes.
And I think the idea of a foundation and amplifying, as you said, or illuminating the success that people are having, you know, investing or putting bets down on other people. I'm very interested in that too. And I think I see myself, you know, interested in that down the road. And I just didn't want to come across as...
No, not at all. I mean, what we want to do, and this is my situation, obviously is different than yours. And, you know, as someone who is, you know, running a public company as an example, building companies from nothing to multi-billion-dollar companies, I had a platform of the companies that I was running, and I had, you know, kind of the you know, disposable wealth, we'll put it that way, to amplify other people's efforts. Yeah. So you need. There are a lot of nonprofits out there, and frankly, I think at least 9 out of 10 aren't that effective. They're not making that much of a difference. But when you find the 1 in 10 that are making a difference, now I feel like, you know, we're investing in, just like we would in a for-profit company, we're investing non-for-profit, one that's doing well, that we could put, you know, our investment to work, and we could contribute from a time standpoint. So we need, you know, approaches like mine need approaches like yours. Yeah. And that's where the magic comes from.
Well, that's the right way to say it. Yeah. And, you know, folks like you need to expect a return on that investment, and the nonprofit world needs to become more and more that way, to your point about the 1 in 10. So let's see. So stories of some folks that really stand out. Let's see. Well, I've got a few different ones that are popping up right away. So I'll start with this guy named Amadou Ba. So Amadou is not...
Amadou Ba.
Amadou Ba, and Ba is B-A-H. And so he grew up in a really, really difficult place, and he was a leader in that place. And even though he was a leader in that place, he was still pulled into all kinds of the negative things that occur in those kind of neighborhoods. He was exposed to things that, you know, kids shouldn't be exposed to: gangs, drugs, violence. He was still the valedictorian of his high school class. He was the guy that everybody looked up to. And he ended up on a full ride to Stanford. And then we ended up getting him introduced to some people in the greenhouse community that encouraged him to consider a career that he never even remotely heard of or would even understand what the words meant, called private equity. And so, where he's from,
which is one of the, and I'm not picking on private equity, but the financial world is one of the least diverse of all industries. I don't think because of prejudice. I think it's because there's other systematic reasons. But if there's one industry that needs diversity as much as any other, the financial services, private equity, venture capital would be at the top of the stack.
Yeah, no, that's right. And he's noticed that since he's been in the industry. He's 6 years in now. So we introduced him to that industry and even what it meant. And, his brain, his skill set, his capabilities were a really great fit. And so he ended up at a firm that's...
Actually, if I could jump in for a second, you just said something there about he didn't even know what it meant.
Right.
And one thing I try to do to encourage the tech community certainly around Colorado, is when there are kids growing up in the underserved communities, they know what a fireman does, they know what a policeman does, what a teacher does, what someone who works in a hospital, but they have no idea what's going on in the tech community, just like they have no idea what private equity. So they don't have role models, they don't have exposure. When you ask them what they want to do, the best of them, the brightest, often will just relate to something that they understand. I want to be a teacher, because I understand what a teacher does. So I think it's an obligation of us in the tech community to build bridges to those communities, working with organizations like yours to reach them and make it so that they're seeing and learning from role models in those industries and know that those career paths are available to them as well.
You have all these brilliant young people coming from these communities that are underemployed for their entire lives because of what you're describing.
Yes.
And so I just had another experience related to what you're talking about. I was speaking. I led a leadership workshop for the alums in our program. So we have a part of our program called the Young Leaders Program, and it's for the alums that are in their 20s. And it was just about a week or two ago. And so I'm leading this leadership workshop, and we end up in a conversation, and I just naturally use the term commercial real estate, right? I mean, just like private equity, everybody knows what that means, right? And I just looked at all the blank faces. I'm like, well, wait, so who knows what I'm talking about when I talk about commercial real estate? Maybe, and these are folks in their 20s, and so they've already been out of college, they're already in the working world, and I'd say less than half, raised their hand. And so I decided to create, as part of our skills modules, a video series. And the first video I recorded with 3 CEOs in our community. So another thing that's sort of the power of our community, I started to talk about Amadou, and I'll go back to Amadou and the introduction into private equity. So here, a little bit more scalable of a solution. I've got the current COO of Savills, the largest commercial real estate brokerage firm in the world, the CEO of an entrepreneurial development company here in Colorado that is looking at different communities in Colorado and creating developments to help change those communities. And then a guy that's investing in distressed properties all around the country. And that's going to be the first of about 5 or 6 videos that we'll put up on our platform, our tech platform, for our alums and our scholars to learn about what commercial real estate is.
Sure.
And so I know that's all seems super basic, but that's going to open that door for a whole bunch of people that didn't even know the door was there.
Yep.
So,
and you want that door to be opened up for them, not when they're in the early mid-20s, but 5, 6, 8 years earlier than that, so that it influences the path they take forward, what degree they get in college, what internships they might seek. Because if you don't know about that until you're 25, then you look back and say, boy, if I knew before I went into college that that's what commercial real estate was, you might have chosen a career path based on that.
Yeah, it would change your path.
Yes.
So Amadou, a couple other interesting things about him, and is why I brought up him as a story that it's been every facet of his life that we've been able to be a part of and impact. He's started a nonprofit now trying to help with young girls in low-income communities having more confidence, especially Black girls, around their appearance. There's a lot of stigma and a lot of different things that he noticed, and he thought it could make a big difference. Greenhouse is the seed funder of that organization. And we also, because of our process, we took him through a process to take his idea and make it into a business plan. And so that's another thing that we're doing with these folks. And so Amadou is going to be a change agent. The guy is relentless. He's brilliant. He's having success for himself. He's supporting his mother and one of his siblings. He started a nonprofit. He's 26.
Wow.
So, it's really an exciting story. And then I'll jump into this next one because it's totally different. And when you were asking, and I was trying to think, I got to come up with some really different ones. And this is a different
I meant to give you a heads up on that before we started.
No.
I was going to go there, but I figured you'd probably know people off the top of your head.
Yep. No, it wasn't that hard. And so Helena Capon is from rural Colorado. And when she got out of college, she decided, you know what I want to do? I want to try and figure out how to make rural communities more attractive for young people so they'll stay. And we all know that we've got a flight out of rural America going on right now that is crippling to these communities. And here she is as a college kid recognizing that. So she's got a business called Gub Gub in Walsenburg, Colorado.
Gub, how
Yes, and this is an advertisement. We're doing an advertisement.
Okay.
So it's Gub, Gub Gub, and it's in Walsenburg, Colorado, and it's right on the highway. And so
I don't even know what Walsenburg. I've never heard of that.
Well, no, nobody has. But you'll notice now you can't get east without going past Walsenburg. It's on your way to Nebraska and Illinois and everything. So if you get off and you want to get something to eat, pizza, ice cream, Gub Gub is only about 3 blocks off the highway. So that's the place to get off and do that. But what's even more interesting, so she's been running Gub Gub for 20 months. They were profitable after 12, which I think, the restaurant business is a tough business, let alone the restaurant business in a town that I don't know the population, but I think it's like 2,000. And so she's got a profitable business. And in her business model, very similar to my Greenhouse Partners, Greenhouse Scholars story, was how do I give back to the community? She's got 3 different initiatives already in place in the community that they've created, one of which is in the school system to help change the school system there. I wouldn't do a good job of outlining her different initiatives, but they're all philanthropic. Her business is taking part of the profit and immediately putting it back into the community. And she's increasing the number of young people that are employed in the community. And people are coming from the other small towns around there to come work at her establishment because it's fun. Other young people, they view it as a secure job. We seed funded that business. We have doubled down and provided her with capital for some machinery in year 2. She considers us to be her primary business advisors. And when she says us, and I know you know this, Dan, about us because you've been so involved in everything, but she means not the staff, sure, the staff, but we're tapping, people like you and saying, hey, would you talk to this woman that's running this business? I think you'd be really good at helping her with her finances or, somebody else for marketing or whatever. So really experienced, really capable people, as you know, in our community that we're tapping and plugging into her business. So she's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's a great example. And, I have noticed with Greenhouse Scholars is the global diversity of the people involved in Greenhouse Scholars is remarkable. Can you talk a little bit about the how so many people from so many different countries end up in Greenhouse Scholars?
Yeah. Well, that's, the way you asked it, I'm not sure I've thought specifically about that. That's really interesting to think about. Why is it that we are an international place in terms of where everybody has come from? I guess there's a few things I'd say. So we have this saying internally, and I'm not sure, we use it externally sometimes, and I'm not sure if you've heard us talk about this, but we call it the big tent approach. And what we mean by the big tent approach is that we're genuinely inclusive. We're trying to create the biggest tent possible. We want a movement here, not you have to say all the words the right way or you have to look a certain way or, whatever. We're trying, anybody that wants to be about positivity and the kind of change that we're after, sustaining community change, we want them in our tent. We're not micro evaluating, everybody. We're trying to be welcoming. And so the big tent approach, I think, just culturally, you know as much about corporate culture as I do. You have to create some principles where people are like, yeah, this is the kind of place this is. And so I think that has fed into the way we've selected people to get started with us and what you're noticing and bringing up. And so, maybe this is not the right example, but I'll give you an example. I have to constantly ask, wait, how many people in the people we're talking about are Black, or how many? I have no idea, right? We're just trying to get the right fit people into the program. And I think people see that, and they're telling other young people about us. And so, the people that have immigrated here from the Middle East, Africa, South America, they're all, people that are ending up, in our program and feeling like it's the right place for them. We were talking about our community, Boulder, earlier, same thing, right? We're creating this community called Greenhouse. So are we creating an environment, as you said, that has people feeling like this is the right environment, the right culture for me? And I think we're doing a really good job at that.
Yep. So I want to focus a lot on Greenhouse, Colorado. But before we focus on Colorado was your first geography, but you've expanded into multiple others. Maybe talk about expanding into others, then we'll come right back to Colorado.
Yeah, so Colorado's our largest state in terms of the amount of resources that are going into a single state. And as you say, though, we're really excited about the fact that our footprint is national. So we're in 32 states.
Wow, 32?
And
I thought you were going to say like 6.
Well, and you're not wrong in a certain metric. And I know why you probably think that, and so it's not inaccurate. So one thing that I want to mention is we have this operational strategy, and so we believe that we have to always be a local organization while we expand our impact nationally. And so we've been pursuing since the beginning headquarters here. Headquarters are always going to be here. And then how do we get people on the ground in some hubs first? And so New York, Chicago, LA. So that's happened. We have people on the ground in those hubs. And now we want to expand with the people on the ground there to contiguous states. So strategically, if I can use that word as it relates to operations, we're going to expand through these hubs. But opportunistically, we're ready to expand anywhere we can get enough funding to start doing the kind of work that we want to do. So we're in the states I mentioned with people on the ground. We also have people on the ground in Georgia and North Carolina. And so we're sourcing students at the front end of our 3-phase model from those states, but we're doing work, projects of different type, working with different types of donors and our alums in 32 states.
Gotcha. So we haven't talked about what the program is. We've been talking about what inspired the program. We've talked about some outcomes of the program, but we haven't talked about what it is. So maybe start with, when someone wants to be part of Greenhouse Scholars, what would they get if they were part of Greenhouse Scholars? What's the program look like? How old are they? Ideally, what happens when they're part of the program? How is it evolved into later in life aspects of the program as well?
Yeah. So our vision, stated succinctly before we opened our doors, so 19 years ago, create a community of leaders who will evolve the communities of the world. And so the way to answer that question about what are we doing, what's the work that we're doing, is we are working on permanently changing communities, especially low resource communities. So our goal is focused on whole community change and different types of communities. So sure, physical, geographic, zip code communities, but also a school is a community, of course, businesses, micro communities, social groups, hopefully, whole industries. We talked a little bit about private equity and the lack of racial diversity, probably a lack of gender diversity as well in that industry.
So,
So how do we create community change? That is our model. And so the community change model has 3 phases. It has the whole person college program, the young leaders program, and the whole community program. Okay. And so we're working to start to sort of as the inputs to that model. We're working with high school seniors to figure out if they're a good fit for our program. To be a good fit for our program, we are looking for the most ridiculous leaders from low resource communities. Their incomes on average are below the poverty line, 70% in our program.
So low resource communities, I haven't heard that expression. Is that a newer way of talking about the communities that?
I'm not sure how long that term's been around, but I've just learned over time that I exchange low income community with low resource community, and I've noticed some of the folks that we work with prefer low resource community. But I got to be honest with you, I'm not really sure the difference. I just know that the terms are sort of interchangeable.
Well, that is interesting. Right when we started this conversation, I forget what expression you're using, but you were really comfortable talking about kind of, say, people of different backgrounds. And it's not, I don't know if it sounds trite, but a lot of people have trouble knowing how to talk about it, especially in this day and age where if you say the wrong thing, you could get yourself in trouble really quick. So what's the right terminology to use? And I think sometimes, and I'm guilty of this myself, you hesitate to use certain words because you're worried about how those words are conveyed. Are they the right words? The words seem to evolve. And that almost gets in the way of just having easy conversation sometimes. So I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but it struck me right away when you start talking about how comfortable you were having that conversation and how most people I know who want to have those conversations and do have them, they're not nearly as comfortable. I mean, you live that life probably almost every day, and most people don't live it, multiple hours every day.
It's interesting. There are a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I am learning things, trying to get it right, every week. And that's really true. I mean, we do have especially for Boulder, but we, in general, we have a really diverse staff, and we're a close group. People are really friends. We get along really, really well. And so I learn a lot from people that are coming from different backgrounds than me. So that helps. I have that advantage. You kind of alluded to that. The other thing is I've noticed is that people, the meaning to simple words has changed for no reason. And so I refer all the time to people as, like somebody was asking me about this guy who's one of my partners at my company. And they're like, I can't remember the context, but it was sort of me sort of describing who he was. I said, he's a Mexican guy. And that through the person, it was clear, the body language and everything. I'm like, well, the word Mexican has changed. You know what I mean? It's like, that is who he is. I mean, that's where his family's from. That's his heritage, just like I'm Scottish. Yeah. And I that part I'm going to lean in on because it bothers me. I don't know, why that's happened. And then the other thing is, and I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast, but, I'm not afraid.
A podcast is where you can say anything.
Well, maybe.
Especially this one, because if you say something wrong, we'll just cut it.
Right. Well, if this ends up then we'll all get a kick out of it. But I'm happy to be canceled, and so what I mean by that is this idea that you alluded to of everybody is on pins and needles about what they're supposed to say or not supposed to say. I know that I don't know what I'm supposed to say all the time, and I know I'm not perfect, and I know that I have a lot to learn. But I'm not going to have people intimidate me into trying to get their version right. And I know I'm trying to do the right thing, be the right person. And so I think one of the things that helps is that I really, I don't care about other people trying to tell me how I'm supposed to be or how I'm supposed to talk or whatever. So I think it helps. Because I think there's too much of this conformity going on in society today where people are trying to push people and bully people into thinking a certain way, and I just won't allow that to happen.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true, and I applaud you for saying that out loud.
I'm probably going to get a lot of calls now where people are going to try and bully me into.
Certainly, if it was a year and a half ago, but I think our society is progressing a bit on that path where we're starting to realize maybe the pendulum the pendulum has swung too far. I do think a lot of people might have made a similar expression as you just made, and then they experienced what it means to get canceled, and all of a sudden they're like, "Whoa, I got to be a lot more careful in the future because I didn't, I thought it wasn't a big deal, then it happened to me, and they freak out." I haven't stepped on a mine yet myself, but I know in business, part of what I think makes companies successful, companies that I've been part of, people that I've been around, is you are quick to try new things, to say new things, say them out loud, take a shot at something, and learn based on the reaction that you get, and fine tune and repoint and redirect and pivot. But to do that, you have to take chances almost every day, even if it's chances just by talking out loud about something you only partially understand, and you say something wrong, and people correct you. Well, your advancement is so much quicker than someone who is waiting to know exactly the answer or exactly what the right thing to say or exactly how to say it. And I think the same is true in what you're describing here by you being able to talk openly. Your example about he's a Mexican guy. Being able to say that advances the conversation a lot more quickly than say, I'm not going to really say that because it might be wrong, therefore I'm going to be vague, or I'm not going to really just have a conversation. I think that gets in the way. I think that's holding us back.
Yeah, you think about, you building your business with Zayo and other things, and I think about my entrepreneurial experiences, and that's all you're describing. Yeah. Like to be successful, you're experimenting, you're taking risk.
Yes.
You're have an idea,
mistakes.
You're putting it out there, you're seeing how the world responds to your idea. And somehow the culture has made it more difficult to do that. And so to your point, it's making it more difficult for people to learn and to grow. It's actually stymieing
and to get to know each other if they come from different backgrounds.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But I got you off track. I apologize.
No, that was great. So I think we were talking about the model, the community change model. And so there's that college entry point. And remember that statistic I brought up a long time ago in the conversation about how 1 in 10 folks from low-income communities were graduating from college. We're graduating 98% of those same people.
Wow.
And so we've proven, that we can help these folks optimize, their opportunity that they've earned, and in doing that, their leadership skills. And that's a key thing for us. And so, because we're going to need that later. And so the whole model is about these building blocks. And so if you take away the first one or the second one, we're not going to get to do the big, audacious stuff that we're working on now. So we're working with them and helping them become great leaders. They have all the stuff, all the ingredients, right? And so now they've got to get some assistance with that. And we're wrapping a whole person program around them. So now they're in their 20s. They're in our Young Leaders program. Well,
which is relatively new, the Young Leaders aspect of it, right?
Yeah, just the Young Leaders program and the whole community program are both only about 3 years old, so which is very new, given that we're 19 years. Yeah. So, and by the way, I want to point out that we wanted to launch the other parts of this model 10 years ago. We just haven't had the resources, and we're trying to be responsible business people, run a sustaining business and not getting out over our skis. And, if you don't have the resources, you get spread too thin. Obviously, we all know that story. So.
Yes.
So the Young Leaders program,
we call that a boom and bust cycle.
Yeah, right. So we were not interested in that. So the Young Leaders program, a lot of the things that folks from low-income backgrounds face when they get out of college are really similar to the things they face when they go to college. A lack of networks, a lack of role models, a lack of context, a lack of sort of understanding how it's all going to work. Back to our what does private equity mean conversation. So we're supporting them now on that journey, and we're connecting them in very different ways. We're expressing very similar program components, but very differently based on life stage and need. And now we're starting to actively work with them on entrepreneurship, on their ideas. So a couple different kinds of ideas. One, just you want to, these folks that want to start a for-profit business like Helena Kapan in Walsenburg, Colorado, or they want to start a nonprofit business like Amadou Ba, or they have a community change initiative, a project, something they want to do, as to create change, positive change in the community. Those all work for us in terms of us investing in helping create those ideas with them. So we are running, facilitating active ideation sessions with a cross-section of our community to surface the best ideas and then get some of these folks interested in these ideas. We're helping create business plans. The ideas that need to raise capital, we're helping them with pitch prep. And then we're funding. We're doing seed funding. Now, we also are just getting built out a bunch of partners that are going to also be doing that with us. So it's
who would partners be in this example?
Yeah, so we're going to have angel investors, venture capitalists, private equity firms, law firms, marketing firms, finance, big accounting firms, all signing up to be, hey, if you need help with this kind of stuff, we're in. And I know you know more about the investment community than me in terms of venture capital, private equity, all that. So you can easily picture if we've got some of these folks signing up to be partners, and we're just the parameter is, hey, just send us businesses that are in our wheelhouse. Not meaning that they're going to force those businesses to have the same scale opportunity as what they might want to invest in, but just in the wheelhouse where they have the expertise. So wow. All of a sudden, we've got a potential venture capital investor in one of our alums' businesses that is investing in 20 other companies, in that same industry. So what an opportunity. So the partnership thing, it's going well, but that's a long-term, that's going to take time to really build that out.
Yep. So, I know a lot of people in the world of, let's focus on Colorado, who have ended up with either directly involved in a foundation or have created the kind of wealth that funds a foundation. And a common theme with most of them is that they want to use their resources to benefit the very population you're focused on in the very ways that you help that population. Yet when I spend time with those people, most of them either don't know about Greenhouse Scholars or don't lean in that heavily. And it's always made me wonder why. I mean, there's almost like some kind of, and I don't think this is unique to Greenhouse Scholars, but there's almost a hurdle that you have to overcome to get the attention of the organizations who are looking for successful organizations like yours, but somehow are having trouble finding it. And it's not like there's dozens of them around. Is that my perception, or how does that look from your perspective? Why don't most of the major, say, foundations of Colorado, why aren't they eager to support the ramp up of your organization?
So it's one of the most important questions for us, has been for the last couple of years. And the reason it's only the last couple of years is because we feel like over the course of, call it the first 15 years, that we earned the right to scale and grow. We've got proof, we've got results, we've taken our time. We've built.
How big by the standards of how many, is students the right word to refer to them? What's the right word? Greenhouse Scholars?
So the key is that we're not a college program. I'm not correcting you. For the audience. Yep. It's the alums and the scholars. Scholars are the college kids. The alums are the folks we work with in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s. We've got almost 500 now in our program.
Gotcha.
The big sort of work that we're doing is to, that ripple effect that people like to
you're working with 500 and they're each working with 10 or 20 who are from their communities, influencing them. that's where the multiplier effect really comes from.
Yeah, so I want to. This just because my brain has a hard time sometimes remembering. I want to make sure we don't forget to go back to the question you just asked, because I think it's such a big deal for us, and I'm glad you're asking it. I do want to talk about one thing first, and it gets to what you just alluded to. So this third component of our community change model, the whole community program. So now we're doing this really complex work where it isn't really that one of our folks that came from a low-income community has to have an idea. Now we're in a place where they're very accomplished. They're in their 30s. So to be in our whole community program, you have to either be an alum that's at least 30 years old, obviously, or whatever other age that's older, or one of our donors or volunteers that we invite into a particular opportunity to work on sustaining community change projects. So it's two things, basically. It's think about running thousands of experiments, and the ones that work, you don't have to invest a lot in those experiments, and the ones that work, you scale them immediately. So I'll give you a quick example. If you've got, I'm angry about our public school system.
Yeah, I am too.
My kids went to public school.
It's the most frustrating.
I'm angry about it. I don't know how you can't be. And so let's say...
Not enough people are, though. I mean, that's
right.
That's what's crazy. That's part of why I'm angry about it is there's has to be so many people who are accepting, and it's not for lack of funding. I mean, we're not, it's not like we're not putting funding together toward public education, but yeah, there's a reason to be angry, and there's people, and the people who should be most angry are the ones who are in the communities that are letting their kids down by having such inadequate public education.
Yeah, and I think they are, and the people in those communities, it's so complicated. It's such a difficult situation for them. And so let's say we've got a solution for.
I know it's difficult, but what words would you use to describe why is it so difficult that despite both parties and all the money we spend on government-sponsored programs and all the good intentions of people outside of government, how can our school system, particularly in inner cities, be so terrible? I mean, what allows that to persist?
Well, I told you about my daughter. So she spent 4 years teaching at a school in Chicago in the Austin neighborhood, which is west of the city, at a school called Michelle Clark. And Michelle Clark's a great school. It's a great community. The kids want to be in that building. They're graduating.
Why? I mean, what's special about that?
Well, yeah, I'm going to talk about it. So they're graduating 40% of the students from high school. 15% roughly are going to college. So in terms of success, it is failing, but it's a really wonderful school. So I visited there a bunch of times. I've gotten to know the principal well. He's a really great guy, really good at what he does. He's changed that school environment, which we're going to go back to. But I'll give you one story. It's hard to talk about, but a student that my daughter was close to, that she taught one day. It's lunchtime, middle of the day, Wednesday. Everybody's out, playing in the on the basketball court, sitting on the lawn or whatever. Car pulls up, and they put 16 bullets in a 15-year-old kid.
Oh.
In a 16 or 17-year-old kid. He was a freshman, and he's dead. And he was in a gang as a 16-year-old kid, and he said the wrong thing to somebody, and that happened. And so that's illustrative of part of the problem, right? So all these kids are so distracted. My daughter, another story, she asked me to come speak about financial literacy, just how to make sure you can, have enough money to, where do you kind of parse your money? Food, your personal entertainment, savings, whatever. A lot of the kids are supporting themselves and helping their parents at home and everything. So, and she knows me, so she's like, listen, Dad, you cannot like expect everybody to pay attention the same way, and you can't be calling them out. I'm like, I got it, And so
she wouldn't want me there then.
No, but you'd get it real quick too. So you show up, and some of the kids that are sitting in that classroom, their lives are a disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got a parent in jail. They've got a wonderful mom that is working 3 jobs and is never home. So they're taking care of their younger siblings, and on and on and on.
Yes.
And so they're mentally exhausted, right? So there's one kid, she just warned me, she said is a really good kid. She said she's going to have her head down on her desk the entire time. And so you're not going to tell her to sit up, right? I'm like, I got it, and I did get it. And then there's other kids that are super engaged. And this one kid is, making money in crypto. He's, he doesn't have any money, but he's actually making money in crypto, and he's asking me what I think about it. And I said, stop investing in crypto is what I think about it. You don't have the money to lose, right? But he was all excited about it, And so all different personalities, just like any other classroom, but a lot more problems that they're bringing into the building. And then you've got in my subjective view, the idea of, the way that the teachers' unions are engaged in, especially our biggest cities, is a major roadblock to student success. And I'm not the right guy to go deep on that topic, or frankly, to be honest, I just don't want to, because I think that it's also complicated.
Doesn't feel like a productive use of time. You're not going to not even put the smallest dent into that. But yeah, I definitely, in an uneducated way, so I got to be aware of that. I don't have a deep understanding, but I have certainly a bias that has developed, not understanding why the teachers' unions in larger cities seem to be a detriment to the furtherment of education for their communities.
And there's so many wonderful teachers. It's really a bummer as a major understatement. I will say one thing, just as a business person, an entrepreneur, any system that I can think of when you're trying to grow something and produce something and have a result, when you can't get rid of the really low performers that are really bad at their job, I don't know how you can build a successful business.
No.
And that is a proxy for what is happening in our school systems.
Yes. Certainly one of the challenges.
Yeah. So one of them. So there's a lot. There's a lot there. You've got parents that are having a hard time having enough mental energy to pay any attention to their kids' education. It's just, the list is so long. But it's a great example, though. My daughter's school. She's now here in Denver teaching at Manual down in Denver, which is another statistically low-performing school with a great culture and hopefully a bright future. But that school in Chicago, Michelle Clark, it's a wonderful community environment at that school, and it's safe, and the kids are not bringing weapons into the school, and that's without metal detectors.
Well, what's long attracted me to Greenhouse Scholars is that the model that you're finding the leaders from those communities, you're going out of your way to find them, going out of their way to bring them into a program that helps them achieve more of their full potential, and you help them navigate afterwards. So many of them, not all of them, but many of them, want to go back and help the communities they came from. And who better to understand how to help those communities than people who rose up from them, have had success, are on a journey, and they understand, because they've been there, what it was like to grow up in those circumstances. And the more of those people you could identify and help, the more likely that you're chipping away at a long-term, more durable solution to, I would say, our nation's largest challenge.
That's right. And so, when you're in this third phase of our program, you said the words, who better to understand? And you were talking about our alums.
Yes.
And that's right. And so now we take the understanding that they have, so that's creating change from within, and now we're getting them the capital, the expertise, the connections to the politicians, to the community leaders, and then we're embedding ourselves in communities in a way with our alums leading the way, where now those communities, whether it's a school or the whole geographic community or whatever, they're welcoming us. They see us as somebody that's supposed to be there, not somebody that's trying to come in and insert our way. And I think that's going to be a major difference as we continue to create this more scalable sort of solution. But I am recognizing that your question, it's been a few minutes, but I'm trying to make sure I remember it correctly. You were kind of asking me, I think, Dan, about how come we can't get some of these people that really care about what we're trying to do? How come they're not supporting us? And right, that was kind of
there's a combination of why aren't they more aware?
Yep.
And some of them are more aware because I know I talk to them about it, so I know firsthand they're aware of it. I'm like, geez, you guys, do you understand what Greenhouse Scholars is doing? And this is a really solid organization, and seems to be right up the middle of the fairway for what you're trying to affect. And the hesitancy of kind of diving in just makes me scratch my head. And again, it's not a Greenhouse Scholars. I think it's something else that's maybe they're hit so much by so many passion ideas that they can't decipher. Even I would think coming from someone like me who's putting money behind it and making the kind of decisions that they also have to make. You would think that would sound different, but it just seems like, boy, the discovery of kind of an effective organization in your backyard who is making a big difference, that the support would gravitate toward that, but it doesn't seem to work that way at the pace that I would expect it to.
Yeah, if somebody asked me, what are you disappointed with Greenhouse? There's almost nothing. The only answer would be the pace. I'd like to be a $20 million operating company right now, and we're a $4.5 million operating company. And so I agree with you. And it's and I think we know some of it, and we don't know other of it. One thing is, and I don't know if this will resonate with you, but we are only doing one thing. We are creating sustainable community change, and we're not going to quit. We're not going to stop. We're not going to change. That's our mission. That's our vision. That's going to happen. But just in our conversation here, just getting through me trying to explain the model, it sounds like we're doing 50 things. And I think for a lot of people, that is tough. People, so, my interaction with you, my knowledge around you, what I understand, like we talked about, we haven't spent a ton of time together, but you seem like what I would consider to be in business a pretty strategic guy. So you've got a big brain, you're working on stuff like quantum, you built a big company. So I think strategic people that think strategically, they get it. And I'm not saying that the other people aren't strategic. I don't mean it that way. I just mean we've seen that the people I know well, I know they're really strategic, they get it really quickly. And so they're like, yep, I understand. To really get at community change, it's this multifaceted, multiple touch point sort of a thing. It's not simple, and it takes time. Other people, and maybe they're just distracted of where everybody's busy, they've got other priorities, you don't always get the full sort of focused attention from them to really appreciate that we're, to my knowledge, the only people doing this, really the way we're doing it, going so deep like this. Mm-hmm. So that is one thing that I think has that we've identified. It's tough to just say it in a tagline. Yep. So I think that matters. I will say another thing. I don't know how you think about this, but people that are putting pretty big amounts of money into things, and that's really what we need. A lot of them don't want to be first, or they don't want to be the only big money. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a real thing. If you're a $4.5 million operating company, you're generally attracting donations that are commensurate with how that would spread out across different donors. So we've got to, as we grow, I think that'll continue, and we've seen it. It continues to get better. The donation levels are getting bigger and bigger. You mentioned something else that is true. So, and it's related to my last point, getting what I call sort of name brand funders. And we actually have a couple of them in Colorado. So the Anschutz Foundation has supported us for probably 14 years.
Oh, I didn't realize that they were that supportive. I should realize that because I just met with them and they said, we support Greenhouse Scholars as well. Yeah. So they said that. I didn't really probe at what level, but
really long time. They were in early.
Is Dave Ryan? Is he actively involved with it, or who's actively involved?
I don't know who is the person that leads our interaction. Andra is who handles that.
Yep.
The Coors Foundation,
Coors
another
as well.
big name foundation.
Yeah.
They've been with us for well over 5 years. And they're really excited about the Young Leaders Program and the entrepreneurial stuff that we're doing. I think that'll help more and more entrepreneurial stuff, more and more big projects that are beyond the college age stuff will attract a different type of donor. So I think that'll help for sure. You talked about people being aware of us. I think we have not had the financial resources, or we have chosen to not allocate the financial resources quite as much to a more sophisticated marketing approach. So here I am, a brand guy, a marketing guy, and we've chosen not to do that. And it's not, of course, or I hope, of course, that we don't know how. We do. We have that expertise in the building with our sister company, Greenhouse Partners. We just don't think that we have enough capital currently to really create an awareness campaign that we think would be really successful. And that's about to change. So we've just kicked off about 2 months ago the research phase of what will be a full-time hire in the first quarter of next year to run a digital marketing campaign and social media campaign that'll be focused on brand awareness, but it's also going to be focused on raising money through the digital environment. So think, everybody was talked a lot about when Obama ran for president the first time. He sort of came up with a way to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, $20, $50 at a time. So we're going to try and raise a lot of money, $100 at a time, digitally.
Interesting. And okay, so I'm a kid in the inner city. I'm doing really well. I'm going to graduate at the top of my class. How do you find them? How do they find you? And how do they get in your program?
So 2 things. First of all, one of the things we've been great at from the beginning is community building, and we're very focused on it. And so in the states that we've been in for a long time, Colorado and Illinois are the best examples. All the counselors and the principals in the public school systems, urban and rural, know who we are. So we're visiting, our program team is out visiting these high schools every year. We don't only go to the same schools. We certainly are putting more of our resources visiting high schools that have a greater percentage of free and reduced lunch, which is a proxy for income levels. And then we send them materials, the schools in the states that we source students from. So we're building relationships the old-fashioned way.
And are you welcomed in by the schools, by the administrative?
Well,
Have you use the resource for them, or is it mixed?
It's mixed, and so the simple answer would be yes. People really know who we are now in those states in particular, in the school systems, and they're excited about what we're doing. There are some folks that feel like it's too hard to get into our program, and so they're hesitant to spend too much time at their school because they know that there's only so many students that would really qualify. Yep. So that's a hurdle we just stay positive about, and we keep battling with, but let me talk to you about why this is going to matter to all your students a few years down the road. I want to tell you a very funny story. It's an important story to our how we got started. So a good friend of mine, he and I met playing basketball together, named Andre Pettigrew. Andre played for John Wooden at UCLA, okay. Very good basketball player. Andre was the assistant superintendent at Denver Public Schools when he and I were friends, and he was one of my first board members at Greenhouse. And I told him about Greenhouse before we started, and he said, I want to be on your board. He's a black guy, so that helped from a diversity standpoint right away. And so we put out our applications. We met with some schools in the Denver Public School System. I met with all the principals in the Boulder Valley School System personally. I was able to get an invitation to one of their meetings. We met with the Jeffco School System. And everybody had 2 months to apply. And we have 2 people at our organization. And we've got Andre and 3 other people on our board. And so the deadline for the applications comes and goes. And how many applications did we have? Zero.
Really?
Zero. So I was stunned. I mean, I've been surprised occasionally in business, but not like majorly surprised. And that was a big one. I was like, holy cow. So I want to give you a scholarship. I want to give you a mentor. I want to, all this stuff. And
we're here to help.
Yeah. And so I called Andre. I said, Andre, you're not going to believe this. I mean, and he's a mild-mannered gentleman, and he didn't say anything for, several seconds. And I still get a little emotional about this. I don't know why. It's just one of those sort of moments. And he said, yeah, I don't know what it is about this, but he goes, you'll have some applications. Mm-hmm. And so he called all the principals at all the low-income schools. And he said, you will find somebody. I mean, he couldn't believe it. He was so pissed. And, all the basketball, very competitive basketball games I played with him in, I was the one that he was pulling out of the shoving match. I never saw the guy, say an ill thing toward anybody. And he was so pissed. And we had 5 applications at the end of the day. And we picked 2 of those students, and that's how we started in Colorado. But you were asking about, are we welcomed? And at the time, we were misunderstood, and I don't think we were welcomed. I think they viewed it as extra work, and I think we have changed.
There's a natural skepticism.
Yeah,
for certain.
But it's changed, as an understatement. We're really known. And then the other half that you were asking about, how do we get applicants? And we do have a scalable system in place now, too. So we have people find us in the digital environment, in the social environment. We're putting, if you want to be a greenhouse scholar, out there in the digital environment.
How many, in today's, focusing on Colorado, how many applicants per year and what's your capacity? How many do you select?
So we have a more difficult acceptance rate than Harvard or Stanford, and not on purpose. We do want to have a difficult acceptance rate. You have to, really be a top leader to be part of our program. But it's about 7% right now of the applicants get accepted. In Colorado this past year, our Colorado students, the class is 14 students. It's been as high just for Colorado as 19 students. And it's just a function of resources, of money, of capital, not getting ahead of ourselves again, not selecting so many students because, we're in it forever with them that we can't afford to support our program. So we're careful about, how many people come into the program. Because of the fact that we can get a lot of folks through social and digital now, and we're good at that, we know how to sort of to turn on and off the spigot to make sure we don't get so many applicants that it becomes, a disincentive.
Yep.
So we, hundreds of applicants, kind of keep it to a place that's manageable, have a whole process that we go through.
When you talk about resources, there's resources, certainly part of that is funding, but what other resource constraints would be holding you back from tripling or quadrupling the number of students?
Well, none. It is just money, and so without any sort of ego that I can identify, we do know what we're doing, and we know where we would spend the money. If how like there's some startups where somebody gave them too much money at the beginning, right? Like we've all seen that happen. We're not a startup. We're 19 years old. If somebody wrote me a check for $100 million tomorrow, I would know exactly what I would do with that money, and it would get invested just like the money we've been getting for 19 years has gotten invested, and we would deliver the results. So it's just the money.
Gotcha. Good deal. So what haven't we covered that you want to make sure we cover?
Well, nothing really. I mean, first of all, I appreciate that I get to sit here and talk about something I'm really passionate about that I think is making a big difference. And so being able to sit here and talk about Greenhouse is really meaningful for me, and I appreciate you having me on your podcast to do that. I did, notice, I think I got a one pager. I actually, by the way, I appreciate your low key approach as well, which is, hey, it's not about preparation. It's informal. Here's some stuff that might come up.
Yep.
And one of the things that you had on there is that, there might be some things that people could share that would be beneficial to other people that want to be an innovator or want to be an entrepreneur, have an idea, but don't.
And that's
know
really
quite
the
how to-
theme. We're trying to expose some of our heroes. You're definitely one of Colorado's heroes, and we're trying to inspire others to be both brave enough and be inspired to try to follow in their footsteps. So
Yeah.
Please.
So yeah, and I actually half of why I want to bring it up and throw a few things out there is I'm really interested in hearing some of the things that you would say about this too, and maybe that's not what you want to do because you're doing these with all kinds of different people, but that's up to you. So my stuff is really basic, and I try and share it with as many young people as I can. And what I want to talk about is really more targeted at younger entrepreneurs and innovators, not people that have done it a bunch and are looking for that one little sort of nugget. This is more for the people doing it for the first time. So the starting place is that being an entrepreneur or really scaling something, like you did, in my opinion, you have to be self-aware and understand if you're really that person. And my biggest thing is, it doesn't sound motivating to people, but my biggest thing is you better make sure you're ready. And by ready, I mean you have to care about work. I think work is really, really meaningful. I think that if you want to have a great life, one that has true joy in it, work is in the short list of things because it's about being useful and productive. And so are you ready? Because it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big deal. I'd like
Let me
to
jump
talk.
in on that one because in the past, people worked hard, didn't have an advantage because most people work hard. Most people in the environments that we're in, working hard wasn't a differentiator. It was like table stakes. When people talk about full-time work, they weren't talking about 35 hours and
Right.
lots of time off and boy, get to leave early for the weekend. The good news for people that work hard today that didn't exist before here in kind of the environments we're in is working hard is a differentiator all by itself.
Yeah.
You show up to the office every day, you put in a full day's worth of work, you are probably doing more than 80% of your peer group if you're young. And you add that up over just a few years, all of a sudden your skill set, your confidence, your capability, your network, your understanding what to do next is so much more advanced than the people are like, really? I get to work from home like 3 days a week. And, when I come into work, I don't have to show up till 9 and I could leave by 1 and I could, do this and do that. Like those days are gonna, that era, isn't gonna go away in its entirety. I think there's good elements of that. I don't think you have to be tethered to an office in order to be, in fact, maybe that's a disadvantage to be fully tethered to an office. But this notion that, you can not work hard and still achieve success is like, I think what those people are going to find is they're going to be looking at the people around them and say, why is that person so much more successful? I'm as good a person as that person is. Yeah, but you didn't work as hard as that person did.
I think there's a major reckoning that's down the road, and it's going to be a sad time for folks when they realize that they're not going to be able to have what they want from their lives and achieve their dreams and all those things. And, the other thing, though, that I try and talk to people about, I've got 4 adult daughters and that are, hard workers and, really well-adjusted, happy human beings. But I still talk to them about this all the time. I mean, what you're describing, the difference in sort of how people think about work, that applies to everything in life. I mean, are there really, really great relationships that were just always easy? I've never seen it. It's always been hard work. Relationships are hard work. You want to raise kids that are amazing. You're going to work your tail off as a parent. It's going to be really hard. You want to be a great athlete. You're not just born a great athlete. You're going to, everything, right? Yeah. So if people resist it with work somehow, the idea of what they want for their lives doesn't include working hard at work, then I don't know. I mean, like, why is that different than anything else in your life? you know, in terms of achieving something meaningful, something that's worthwhile. So anyway, I think that's a thing. And then another thing is, so great ideas are great. I'm an idea guy. I really do have a lot of great ideas. And the idea, though, of being successful at doing something with that idea is not just having a great idea. I think you have to have a plan, know how to execute the plan, and then be really good at knowing when to pivot. And some of the pivots are tiny little pivots, you know, all the time. You know, every week you're making decisions that are different than what you thought it was going to be. And sometimes the pivots are major. So anyway, sometimes people are like, oh, I got this great idea. And you know what? Maybe it is.
Great ideas are a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
You know, great ideas isn't where great businesses come from.
Yeah.
Let me talk a little bit more about pivoting because I agree with you. But before I get there, let me talk about what it means to have a great idea in a way that really turns into
There's a
a
result.
viable business.
Yeah.
And I'd like to tell a lot of students who want to be part of a startup, they want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, great. My recommendation is don't be part of a startup. You could do that later. Be part of a scale-up because a scale-up is a successful startup. And when you're part of a successful startup, what happens is you start to understand an industry. You start to see an opportunity from a vantage point of a company that is scaling up, so having success, but you'll see tangential opportunities. You'll build relationships with like-minded people who understand the industry. And then when you have a good idea, it probably is worthy of exploring because you understand something unique and real thorough. If you have a really good idea out of the blue, there are probably so many people that are way ahead of you that you don't even understand what it is you don't understand. So you have to put yourself in a position where if you're an idea person, you're in an environment where you're learning a context and you're discovering something that truly is unique and truly is actionable and a set of relationships around you that will want to rally with you to make that happen. But coming back to the pivot comment, pivoting is all important. Pivoting is something you have to be comfortable doing. So if you have a great idea and you're stubborn about that idea, it ain't going to work. If you have a great idea and you're willing to pivot, you're going to either make small changes frequently plus big changes occasionally, and then you're going to land on something that really matters. That's what a really good startup that becomes a scale-up, that becomes a viable company, that's the process that the leader goes through. Yeah. But it's hard because you have to admit you were wrong before. In fact, you have to admit you were wrong before and not even think twice about it. Do you think Elon Musk, who we all think of as kind of a very special type of leader in kind of our era, he's the quickest guy to come up with an idea, and he's the quickest guy to change an idea and pivot into something else. And he doesn't lose sleep over it. He just moves on, and you have to have that kind of mentality.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the idea of failure. I think failure is great if it's small and it's not being repeated. And so I love being wrong. People that know me are always like, Pete, you think you're right all the time, and it's actually not true. I'm testing, and when I'm wrong, I'm wrong every single day, and I actually. My ego isn't affected. My confidence isn't affected. I'm actually thinking, well, I'm glad I recognized that I was wrong or I failed or whatever, and I know what to do about it. Yeah. And I'm good. And
learn quickly
I just
if
move
you're
on.
willing to do that.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to make a quick decision, the world's going to pass you by if you want to be kind of someone who implements ideas.
Yeah.
And if you get stubborn about an idea you had, even if it's kind of a good idea, that's not going to get you to the finish line either.
Yeah.
It's being willing to be quick to have ideas, listen and observe around you, what kind of reaction, responses, what kind of feedback loop do you get, and then pivot, redirect, and not think twice about it.
Yeah, stubborn and relentless are two different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point.
Right.
So what else? What else do you?
No, that was it. I just thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about some things that young people benefit from that are going to go try and do something.
I think you and I probably share a lot of things in common, but one thing we both share in common is we really do want to see those next generations kind of come up, do stuff, create stuff, make for a better world, including whatever communities they came from, how to be leaders that give back to their community even by being inspirational, by being there, by helping solve the problems, and by being role models for others. And I think through Greenhouse Scholars, you've built a great platform doing that. I'm appreciative and lucky to be in a position to be supportive of that. I know the team around me really appreciates what you're doing, and we're going to be there and hopefully inspire others to support you guys as well.
Well, thanks, Dan. I love being a part of this conversation. I'm extremely appreciative of everything you guys are doing for us, both when you were at the company and with your own endeavors with the foundation and your family. Your whole family's involved. It's been incredible. So we'll keep earning the opportunity to have you guys with us, and that's what we're all about.
Yeah. And I, in particular, want to figure out a way of how to expose more of the Greenhouse Scholars and the greenhouse community to the tech ecosystem that's all around us, so that the barriers of saying, maybe I want to be a teacher, maybe I want to be a fireman, but maybe I want to get into the tech world. I want to be, you mentioned one kid who's already in cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
I want to understand what around here is happening in quantum, in space tech, in fintech, and maybe that's what I want to choose. So how do we break down those barriers? So that's where I think we can make a special contribution.
Yeah, right. That sounds great. Well, in a small way, we can repeat what I'm doing with those commercial real estate folks and maybe make some content that'll get shared with all the people in our program.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
Cool.
Thank you. This has been awesome. I enjoyed it.
Me too. Me
All
too. Thanks, Dan.
All right, good deal.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Bear Roars featuring Pete Burridge. This podcast was produced by Loud Bear Productions and edited by Courtney Caruso with support from Allie Berman, Emily Notaro, and Gibson Siegert.